So, hello. My name is Sandro. I'm the founder of the London Software Craftsmanship community. I know quite a few of you already. And so, as probably some of you may know, I've been involved with the software craftsmanship movement very early. Was one of the people that brought craftsmanship from the US to the UK and Europe later on. And for the past 6 years, we spent a lot of time bringing software craftsmanship for developers. So I might close that. So bringing craftsmanship to developers. And I think that all the communities, like in London and across Europe, including Barcelona, I think that we've done a lot of good things for promote professionalism, promote some technical practices. The craftsmanship movement helped XP to almost like bring back XP or rebalance Agile, which was a good thing. But I think that for me, the next thing is we are still fighting organizational models. So quite often, like I go to Socrates, all the Socrates conferences and speak to a lot of developers in the craftsmanship communities, and it's always the same theme in the past 6 years. Is my manager this, my team lead that, and my colleagues that, and blah blah. And it's almost becoming a developers anonymous. Right, so, and sort of stuff. And so I think that for me, the next point in craftsmanship, and as I said, I wrote a full book on it and about professionalism and the developer's attitude and stuff, but we haven't done much on company structure, if you like. And I now had a problem because when I started the whole craftsmanship movement thing, or helped to bring that to Europe, I was focused on the developer's side, and I had been a permanent employee for 17 years of my life, and it was very easy for me to complain about the world, right? So the company sucks, and the project sucks, this client sucks, everything sucks, and I was trying no, the world needs to be better so that I can feel okay, right? So, but I was never in a position where I was on the other side of the table, right? So it was easy for me to actually complain about the companies and stuff, but then all of a sudden, just short of 3 years, I had the opportunity to start my own company. And that was quite enlightening for me, because, okay, so now I see the world from more than one perspective. And that's not an easy perspective to look at. So, and then I said, can I create something different? And then one thing is to realize that you have a problem. Another thing is to have a solution. And I realized that no one sets up a company to suck, right? So you don't say okay, I'm going to start a new business and I'll bring all these people here and I'll make them miserable, right? So that's not how it goes. So why it happens? And then I was trying to look for answers on these things. And I said, how can we actually try to create something that is slightly different, that is slightly more aligned to the software craftsmanship principles and values, and because then I was starting, I put my employee hat, and so I complain about so much stuff, all this bureaucracy and this and that, but can we actually do something better? And I could not. I had ideas, of course, but it's not that I had all the answers, and neither were my business partner or my friends and stuff. So, and then we started looking for some answers, and so that's all I think that I was thinking about. As an employee, it would be awesome if I was empowered, right? So I was always demanding that companies would empower me, so because I'm awesome and I could change the world, and they know nothing, and if I were empowered, I would help them to be an awesome company. And when you start thinking about that, you realize that if you were empowered, how you would change. And you realize that empowerment on its own is just not enough, because you can have all the willingness in the world to help, but that doesn't mean that you have the experience or you know what to do. Right? So, and that's, I also took that on board. And so, like, well, if you're going to build something, yeah, it would be great to empower everyone, but then will we fail as a business in 2 months? Because, like, what do we know about running a business or anything? So, and then we started looking for answers. And one thing I knew for sure was that if we had a company, we wanted it to be based on software craftsmanship and agile values, and lean as well, of course. So these 3 things, like, together, for me, are very, very important. But that, again, like, we know how to do that in projects, in test driving code, and lean startups and stuff, but actually running companies is not the same thing. And then I started looking for answers, and so, of course, I had my own, I heard there's a great book, by the way. So I had my own utopic view of the world, but could that be translated in something that it was easy to sell that to developers in a team? Could that be translated into an organizational structure? And then I read a lot of things. I'm going to show that again, this list of books, because they were quite essential for me in order to clarify some thoughts, get some ideas and stuff. But one book that was quite revealing was this one, Reinventing Organizations. I definitely recommend that you read. As everything, it has pros and cons. There are some blog posts that actually, like, go against some of the stuff that is in the book. But reading this book actually helped us to, first of all, to validate some ideas we had, and also to actually get some more ideas from other organizations. This book talks about, like, 20, I think, organizations that are all above 100 people, and they are run in a very special way. And they are in many different segments as well. So it was fascinating to see how companies of various different sizes and different industry segments can be structured in a way where people are empowered and decision making is decentralized and everything else. So one thing that book does, which was fascinating for me, because, like, again, like, it's easy for you to understand that you have a problem. Well, to know that you have a problem. Another thing is to understand exactly what the problem is, how you got to that place, and what you could do to avoid. So the book basically talks about the evolution of humanity, the evolution of our consciousness and our egos, and how that actually maps to company structures as well, and how much our ego plays into the organization of our companies. And so I'll try to go a little bit quick on some of these things because they're not so. Can you still see this size? So if you go back to the early days, we were still, like, living in very, very small family nucleus, if you like. There was no hierarchy, but at that point, like, the thing about our ego was not fully developed. So there was no distinction of us or humans in general, like, from humans and environment. So that was not a thing that they really. There's research from anthropologists and all that kind of stuff. But it was very violent because there was no distinction of the self, right? So everyone was the same thing. So at that point, there's nothing. I don't think that there is any company that actually have this kind of structure today. So small bands, no division of labor and stuff. But that's quite a curious fact to know. And then as humanity evolved, oh, by the way, so they associate a color, a noun and a color to qualify or classify maybe different periods in time. And that time, we were very reactive. We were just looking for food and reacting to the environment. As civilization evolved, then the groups of people, they went beyond a small family group to tribes and a few hundred people. And then what was fascinating is, like, as you start putting more people together, there is a need to change how they collaborate and how they organize themselves. So there is an evolution of the ego or the self as you start having more complexity in terms of people and organization. So at that point was still so humanity gave a leap in terms of consciousness. So they started distinguishing themselves from each other. but they were still quite prehistorical, like, you know, not prehistorical, but like still not as evolved. So for example, they were a society where they were conscious about themselves, but everything that they didn't understand was magic, right? So yeah, the sun shines, so there's God and magic and stuff. So they were not very scientific at that time. And they, because they still didn't understand, there was no great division of work in their society. That's when, like, we start having the elders and shamans. There was some distinction because, like, the ego evolved. They were distinguished themselves from each other. So there was a few positions being created, but still not very interesting. There's no companies in there. Things get a little bit more interesting when we get to this point in here. What happened, and that's why we call Magic Magenta, by the way. So the Impulsive Red was a very interesting period in humanity, because at that point, our ego was fully formed. So there was a sense of the self, that we were very different. But there was not many empathy. So we were aware of who we are, and we could distinguish ourselves from everyone else, but there was no empathy towards anyone. And then society was now moving from tribes to chiefdoms and proto-empires, so it's still like thousands or tens of thousands. But at that point, because there was no empathy, there was power, there was violence. So people were ruling by power, by fear, right? So that's how the society was started to be structured. And as we started getting, how can I say, our ego became like, okay, I'm different from you. Start creating a difference, and I'm better than you, or you are better than him and stuff. And that's roughly when slavery came about, which is very fascinating if you start correlating an evolution of ego and distinguishing yourself from others, and you start having like, I'm better than you, and then you start doing things that you probably shouldn't be doing to other human beings. And unfortunately, there are still some companies that they behave in a certain way. Right? So now we start getting some correlation from our stage of our ego. Oh, by the way, so it's not that we go from one stage to another. So the way that we evolved as human beings, like Russian doll, that you have the outer door, then close it, is similar to this. So basically, for example, you cannot say that one person or one company's infrared or magic or red or this or that. You can operate at different levels in different situations. So if I feel threatened, my level of threat might be very aggressive, not very rational, but I can be rational in other situations. But at some point, people just had these ones, they don't have other ones. So certain companies, you can still find these, because the ego is at that point that I have no empathy. So violence, or the leaders, they rule by fear. And you still see that in certain modern societies. But for example, organized crime and things like that, or even if you bring that to companies today, you may find companies that deal with unskilled work, mainly in not developed countries. So you can still find this kind of organization in certain places. But I don't think that anyone working with IT, I hope that you are not in the situation where your leader needs to constantly demonstrate power through violence, right? So it's through fear. But you can still start seeing some correlations between human behavior to how companies are structured today. So this is more common. In terms of humanity, at 4,000 before Christ, and by the way, those numbers are just an approximation. And also we all know that the humanity didn't follow a linear trajectory, like so humanity evolved at different speeds at different parts of the world and all kind of stuff. So it's just generalization and an approximation as well. But basically at that point in our history is where proper civilizations were formed. So because we were coming from, as humans, from a very violent and chaotic society, as society became bigger, or the groups of people working together or collaborating became much bigger, there was a need for structure. And at that point, our ego also evolved. Let me just bring that up a little bit. So our ego evolved as well. So, but this evolution was very interesting because at that point, we started developing the awareness of others or caring about what others thought. And that led society to a very interesting place where people start behaving according to how they are expected to behave. Or behave so that if I behave in a certain way, I will be accepted in a certain group. If I behave in a different way, I won't be accepted in a certain group. So you end up now not doing things that you want to do because you care about how you are going to be perceived. And that's when, at that point, you start having a difference of social classes, caste, gender differences and stuff. So according to where, how you were born, the gender that you had, or the social level that you were born, you would be put into a group, a category, right? So at that point, you start having in society a more specific division of labor. That's when you start having rulers, administrators, priests, and more. So you start having a hierarchy because we're coming from a very aggressive, very violent, very chaotic. So to organize a civilization, a society, humanity organized itself in a very hierarchical manner, right? So, and because of this organization, again, as you have this hierarchy, these groups, people wanted to belong or to behave accordingly, right? So how does it relate to companies today? The reason that we say conformist, Umber, is because you need to conform to the structure, right? But so the reason that the way that this relates today was as we evolved. That's just more, I think. So every new, how can I say, stage from this point onwards has some breakthroughs in how humanity organizes itself. And one of them is that we need long-term perspective. And at that point, it was the first time in our history that humanity was actually thinking about the future. Up until now, we were only like either living in the past or the present, or we didn't even care and had no notion of time. But at that point is when agriculture was introduced, which means that humanity was looking for the future because agriculture needs to go through the cycles, right? So, but in order to think about cycles and the future, they needed repeatable processes. That's what we've done with our hierarchy stuff. So that's where some of organizations are today. That's why they have processes, because they are looking for stability. So we cannot just say that they suck as a company, they are bureaucratic and blah blah. We need to understand their history, their trajectory, where they are, why they have those troubles. And for me that was important because, like I say, one thing is to say, how can we create something that doesn't suck? But another thing is, like, it's very easy to have something that doesn't suck when you have two people, right? So what if we had, like, how did they get there? These companies were not born bureaucratic. But what happened? And that was the seeking for repeatable processes and stuff like that. So because of the chaotic nature that they were, they start becoming to be averse of change, because they say, like, now we have a process that works. If we start deviating from this process, we may be back on chaos. So let's stick to that. So then they don't want to evolve. So they don't evolve because of fear of being in a worse place. So when you say this company is bureaucratic, yes, it is, but why? Because of normally fear of being in a worse place if they change. So another thing was that because of the formal hierarchies and their nature, human nature of belonging, we need to belong to a group. And we have the hierarchies and we have large companies. We start having the us and them sort of situation. So we have the workers, you have the managers, right? So we have the pyramids and stuff. So in the workers, like, as you have the casta system, because people are in different layers, it's funny what happens in there, because, like, a person in a different layer may not trust the other one, they see that other layer as inferior, and sometimes this person was in that other layer. But as soon as that person moves to the layer, he starts behaving in a very different way, behaving the way that this person is expected to behave in that layer, even when it comes to treat other people. So people that started as a very bottom of a company very humble and stuff, all of a sudden is that they are a dick when they get to manager. Because they need to behave, they are expected to behave that way. And they feel the need to belong, to be accepted. So, let's move on a little bit. So then this is the conformist. Here humanity gave a massive leap in a lot of things. Up until now, we were following rules. We were not questioning. We were organizing ourselves, not questioning anything. So we were conforming. At some point, probably around the Renaissance until mid-20th century, there was a big revolution. We, like a lot of people, philosophers and stuff, we start questioning religion, questioning status quo, questioning everything, going against everything. So that led this questioning and the bit of I want to be better than what we have led to a lot of how can I say, evolution in science and a lot of things. So they wanted the truth. They didn't want just a formula. The view here of people, when I say people, like individuals, as I said, you cannot just qualify everyone in the same bucket. But it started changing, right? So we were saying like all individuals should be free to pursue, right? So their goals and stuff. So it started evolving to like people that are, everyone should have equal chances, but the best ones should survive or should evolve. A similar, something along these lines. So during that period in time, even at almost your early days, people are seeking success, money, so a bigger house and stuff. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for the future. But I want to achieve something. I need to be someone in life, right? Because that's important. Because that's how I'm going to be perceived by the rest of the world. And this kind of degree of consciousness, you can map to some organizations. Maybe I will remove actually these names because those names came from somewhere. But like. And not every multinational is bad. You know what? So not every company is bad. So, but this goal of we need to be the best company. We need to dominate. We need to have the biggest market share. We need to destroy our competition and stuff. So that's what you see in this type of achievement organization, but it's also related to the stage of our own egos, or the egos that people are running those companies on. So, because they needed to come out of these in order to achieve. So they were conforming, but they need to be better now. They cannot just conform. You cannot innovate if you only follow rules, right? So they need to be better. And that's when we start seeing, like companies that have this mindset, you start seeing R&D departments and marketing, you start seeing pockets of excellence. I worked for quite a few large organizations, and they don't suck entirely, right? They have pockets of excellence. And those pockets are the ones that people are trying to innovate. And that's what they do, but they still maintain the hierarchy. They still maintain the processes, they still maintain everything, but they create these pockets of specialists to try new things. What happened as well, in order to achieve things, they need to motivate people. And motivating people gets quite interesting. Let's see, that's a lot of stuff. You still concentrate the decision making at the top, right? So they give the directions, but they want to achieve goals. So they start, that's when objectives and targets are introduced, right? So they want to provide these milestones, these things that people need to achieve in order to do better, so in order to motivate them. And then you have all these KPIs and stuff, and budget circles, all this kind of stuff, right? So this is what we call a carrot, right? So if you achieve that, you're going to give you the carrot, you're going to give you the bonus, you're going to give you a good performance review or awards. I have a medal of my company that I was the best, whatever, I found more bugs in my system or whatever, right? So, awesome. So, even stock options, right? So, we need to be careful. I had a lot of conversations about stock options recently, and we need to understand exactly what it means, right? A lot of people say like, oh, but I work for someone, I had stocks of coal. How much does it worth? I don't know. How many stocks are there? I don't know. What can you do with that? I don't know. Well, but I have them. They're going to give that to me if I achieve something. So you should be careful with that one. But that's the carrot, right? So I'm motivating people in exchange for a reward. And I won't go into the budget system because it's too much. And this is very interesting because, like, although they want to achieve stuff, their egos are not allowing them to let it go because they are accountable, which means that they still keep control. It's important for them to keep control, but provide the carrot so people do the work, achieve their stuff, but they still retain control. And then it leads to the meritocracy. So although this is a good thing in a certain way, it's better than where we were before, at least. We're not like if you are a tester, you'll be a tester for the rest of your life, or developer, or manager, or whatever. So you don't need to conform to a single position. You can still, the meritocracy allows people to move up. But you still have a few issues in there, right? So basically, like, I love this one, it's like, so senior managers have corner offices and fly first class, and if you work hard, you will have one day. So you have one of these offices one day. So that's the meritocracy. And then I think that quite a few companies that I know are probably around achievement orange, right? So that's the most of the non-IT companies and large companies where IT is a support role for them. Most that I know are here, the ones that I worked with. For the more IT-based companies, I believe that they are in a slightly better place. So at this time in our history, there is quite more recent. Once again, like, this now gets very blurred because we had this behavior 200 years ago. People trying to free this, or even more, free the slaves and stuff, and that's a pluralistic green. Pluralistic green means, like, we now, our ego is in a place where we have empathy, right? So we care about people. We are sensitive to what people think, right? So that's some people operate at this level, right? That's their default level. I believe that a lot of people that operate in this level, you can see servant leadership. You can see people empathizing, talking about minority groups and diversity and trying to make the world better, right? So, and then how this reflects into organization. An interesting thing that I find is that a lot of people are uneasy with the power and hierarchy. So, oh, I hate this hierarchy, I hate this and that, but then they don't have a better alternative. And that goes back to what I was saying at the beginning, right? So, empower the same thing. So, we are in a better place, like most of us, I hope, but most technical companies or companies that are based on technology and developers are at the forefront, creative industry, we are like that. So the decision making is more like decentralized, so managers are talking about servant leadership and all this kind of good stuff. So it's a more value-driven type of culture instead of just we want to be the best and stuff. And organizations are caring more about the environment as well, and what they're doing, like slavery or child work in other countries. So they are more not only about their investors but other things as well. And most organizations, they are in this family metaphor, right? So they embrace people a little bit more. So this is a much better place. But there is one thing in here that, for me, is very interesting, is this. We are sensitive to other people's feelings. We will empathize, but we're still on the truth, right? I need to treat people well, I need to accept these people, but I'm still treating them as different from me, right? So, and that reflects in the organizations as well. So, and then we got to Teal, finally. So after half an hour talking about whatever, right? So for me, the biggest thing about the Teal side is if you go in a scale from infrared to green, it's kind of like when you go to Teal, you are in a slightly different level, because for me the most interesting thing is this called the disidentification with your own ego. You basically like you start stepping out of our own ego and seeing people, seeing things in a more objective way without caring too much about how you will feel according to the situations. And this is for me like, I by no means, people that know me well can say that I can operate that, because I'm quite egocentric. But I'm conscious about that. So, and being conscious about it is extremely enlightening, because once you understand how our egos base our lives, all the decisions that you make in life, even within our companies, the role that our ego play, right? Because we care either how I'm gonna feel insecure or uncomfortable, or how other people are gonna feel, and that leads to some of the problems that you saw in some other organizations. So, in terms of the world view, like this one is for me the most important, is the inner rightness as a compass. You stop doing things just because you're going to get more money. You start doing things because you think it's right. Right? So you start asking yourself, like, is this the right thing to do? Are we being correct with other people? So that changes quite significantly. And once you can completely disassociate yourself with your ego and fears, right? So that's all related. You can get to trust instead of control, which is, again, as a permanent employee for 17 years, that's always what I wanted. But when I flip the coin now, this is much easier said than done, right? Because this is where it gets interesting. When you have a company, you are legally responsible for that entity. Whatever goes wrong, you are legally responsible. And you will be the last one to leave that company. As soon as things are not going so well, your best people will find a job next day. Right? Your other people will find a job because they're developers and everyone is hiring today. So, but you will stay until the end. And then when you say, I want to set up a company where everyone can do whatever and trust everyone, it was not very easy. So then so understanding that, I said, okay, so I'm going to give more concrete examples of what we do that follows some of the breakthroughs. I by no means are claiming that we are fully Teal, because we are not. Right? So we have elements of these things, so some of the breakthroughs I'm going to share. But I think that for me one thing that was very, very important was, don't be a fucking hypocrite. Right? So if you are in a position of power, if you are in a position where you're going to hire people, you're going to do stuff, remember where you came from. Remember how you felt when you were in a different position. Right? And even like after writing a full book on professionalism, to be very hypocritical if I try to run my company in a very different way. So I'm going to show a few things that we do. Again, like there's a lot of stuff, so we can, if you want, we can have a full open space tomorrow. I can go into detail of everything and stuff. I can talk about the pros and cons. I will summarize some of these things, but there's a lot to be said in each item in here. But I'm happy to go in details tomorrow if you want to. So first thing, flat structure. Everyone wants that. Flat. So no managers, only peers. That sounds awesome, right? So, and bare minimum support functions. So what is a support function to start with? And why this is important? Support function is every other thing that you need to have that is not part of your core business. So I'm not trying to advertise my company, but like, because this is extremely important in a context, because like those are values. Self-management is a Teal value. Wholeness is a Teal value. Evolutionary processes are a Teal value. Those are the values. Those are the practices. Right? It's almost like the value of TDD is that I can press a button and make sure that my system is correct, and I can go live as often as I can because I trust my system. That's the value. So, well, I want to achieve that. TDD is the practice. If I use this one, I may get to that value, to deploy often and stuff, and make sure that everything works very quickly. So that's almost the same thing. But practices, they need to be in a context, otherwise they don't make sense. So when I call support functions, means that Our core business is to deliver software with our clients. We are a software company. We go to places and we develop our software, develop software with them, and embed in their teams with a full team or a coaching. So that's who we are. Everything that is not that is a support function for us. HR support function, accounting support function, right? Marketing support function. Everything else that is not the things that we do that bring money to the company is a support function. They should be there to support us. The problem that happens in other places that I worked with, they also have their core business, but they also need to have all these other support roles. Because those support roles, those support functions, they are constantly in the office. At some point, they need to justify why they are there, right? Because they themselves don't bring their money directly to the company. They are not the core business. But those people, they are still people. They have their own egos. It's like, look, I'm a good professional. I'm doing my bit here. And then they need to show. They need to start creating rules. They need to say, oh, I'm going to come up with a new recruitment strategy, the HR. Oh, we are HR. We understand people. We're going to sort out your recruitment process. It has nothing to do with your developers, but they are. So, and that is for everyone, right? And at some point, because they are creating these procedures and policies and stuff, they become more important than there is a shift in certain companies where the support roles are more important than the actual roles. And everyone is miserable. How can you work, like, as I did, to software consultancy companies and have people in the back office have more saying than I? If I am the one working with the clients and bringing a lot of money, that doesn't make any sense. So we decided not to have them. We have one. Out of 24 people, we have one person doing support role. And she does support role. We could not live without her, that's definitely true. But yeah, things are in the right order. Sounds awesome, right? But there is a problem. You don't want support role. So what I always say is, like, managers are not necessary, but management is. Right? Salespeople are not necessary, but sale is. You need to sell. Right? So architects, they may not be necessary, but architecture is necessary for any significantly meaningful software that you build. So when you remove support function, that means that everyone else that is a developer that is part of the organization for core functions, they need to do that. Do you want a healthcare system, healthcare insurance? Go and find one. Give us the quote. As soon as you remove these people, because you don't want them, you need to do their job. You cannot have your how to say it in English, like have the cake and eat it. Yeah. So careful with what you wish for, because like a lot of the developers now, they need to do a lot of things inside our company that is not their job. So if it's not their job, they're going to find someone that does that for them and tell them what they need to do next, what they want. Right? So business involvement, everyone says, oh, it should be close to the business. One thing is to understand, there is a massive difference in here. One thing is to understand, I'm building a software, I need to understand the business domain of my client. That's one thing. That's not what we mean here. When I say business involvement, I mean running the company. Understand how a business works, not the business domain of a system. Understand sales, understand forecast, understand everything. Pipeline, pre-sale, everything. Right? So, and that because, again, there's no support role. So if you want the salespeople promising stuff that you can't deliver and then you need to live with that, well, that's a choice. But if you don't want them, you better get involved with the sales and everything else in the company. Right? So those are the pros and cons when you start saying, I don't want the bureaucracy, I don't want the hierarchy, I don't want these, I don't want people telling me what to do. But there's some work to be done, and that's not writing code. So, open financials, a lot of people love that. Oh wow, they have open financials, great. So, this is not the goal. Right? Open financials by itself has no value. It's almost like Scrum Scrum doesn't have value. GDG doesn't have value. Anything like XP doesn't. All of these are means to an end. I'm going to use some practices because I want the value. The value I want, for example, I want continuous delivery. I want to deliver software multiple times a day. In order for that to happen, you need to have a lot of engineering, a lot of discipline, a lot of collaboration, testing and stuff. But those things in the middle are means to an end. This is a means to an end. Right? So why this is a means to an end? Because we wanted everyone to be involved in the business. And you cannot have the people involved in the business if they don't have access to the whole information. So the reason where we have a lot of discussions with our managers and bosses and stuff, and it's frustrating because different people, they are talking about the same problem, but they have different views of the problem. They have different pieces of the information, and they don't share with each other. So you minimize the chances of reaching an agreement and maximize the frustration. But if you give all the information, if every single person has all the information, they all have exactly the same amount of information, it's not that you're going to agree with everything, but you maximize the chances of reaching a satisfactory agreement. That's why this is important. It on its own has no value. So decision making is a very interesting thing. So we start from the position of trust, right? So we don't start the position like he or she cannot do her job. No, we will trust this person. But again, trust is not. We don't live in a beautiful world. It's not because I trust someone that this person knows what to do. This person has the willingness to help, the willingness to contribute. Just doesn't mean that this person has the skills to contribute. So we had to put a few things in place. So we wanted to decentralize the decision making. The reason that we wanted that is I'm fully aware that I'm limited by my own ignorance. Right? There is a limit to what I know. There will always, it will always be there. So in order for me to go beyond the limits of my own ignorance, I need to harness the intelligence and the skills and experience of everyone around me. So I want these decision making. So what we did, there was an evolution here. We started with a Craftsman board. We had elected, we had democratically elected 3 members of the board. Pedro was one of them. I still one of the members of the board. So it was me and Mesh, my other co-founder, as the permanent members, 3 other people. And then basically the way the decision making worked at the beginning, people, if they want to change anything in the company, they would come up with a business proposal, submit that to the board that they elected, besides me and Mesh, and that would be voted, but then it was not like yes or no. You would, if it was a yes, awesome, done. If it was a no, it was not no, fuck you. No, it doesn't work like that, because this person wants to improve the way we do business. So we would work with the person or that group to try to know, what about this and what about that? Oh, we didn't think about that, so how can we fix that in order to make that an acceptable thing, and not just a rejection? That doesn't make sense, we're not against each other. So, but why did we have the board first, instead of having these that I'm going to explain? Because of fear. My fear. I was scared to death to say to people in my own company, say, you know what, from today you can do whatever the fuck you want. Right. So I could not do that. And I still have an issue with that. It's not easy. I cannot be a hypocrite either, like in this site. Right? So, but as you go along and you try different models, it's fascinating as you are giving more trust, but again, more empowerment and trust doesn't mean experience. So you need to build. So in order for all of this to work, we need to start working with these people and also sharing with them, not just how you test drive code, but how business works. Because then you are giving them knowledge in running a business as well, so that they can contribute. Because otherwise, none of this matters, right? Because they don't know what, they will start asking for things that don't make any sense. So almost like writing some crap code. If you don't have like at least a base where you agree of what clean code might look like, you cannot work together. You need to have at least a base. That's for businesses the same. So the initiative circus was a massive advancement for us. So basically, any person can come up with any initiative, anything. Opening an office in Barcelona was an initiative that came out. Right? So anything can be massive investments to nothing like choosing a healthcare insurance. So you need a core of 3 people at least. Why 3 people? Because it's not because one person wants to change something that this person knows what she's talking about. Right? And not because she's stupid, maybe she just doesn't have this experience. So if you just being able to convince 2 other people allows this original idea to evolve, right? Because people need to buy into that. And as they go through this process, that evolves. People will point other things. And then there are a few rules. They need to talk to everyone. So each initiative should be open to everyone. So we keep that on Trello. If you go to Trello, create an initiative that is broadcasted to our Slack channel. Everyone is aware of the initiative. And then no one can be rejected in the initiative. Everyone can join. And then you can decide the level of engagement that you want to have. Either it's not at all, which means that whatever is decided, you need to go with it. Or you can join as an advisor. But I don't want... An advisor is there to help, but has no power for decision. But the people within the initiative, whatever they decide, is implemented. And that's valid for me as well, because I need to sign the check quite often. So if I don't get involved, whatever they decide, I need to sign. If I feel that I need to get involved, I'll get involved. But they have the obligation of consulting whoever is going to be impacted. But that's a two-way street. When you want to do that, this amount of people are going to be impacted. For example, if they're going to make an initiative or change in a local project with a client, they basically don't even need to go through this process. They just talk to each other and do whatever they want, because the people impacted are there. If they want to do company-wide, they need to talk to other people. But also people need to, there is an initiative start going on, I'm going to be impacted by that. If you don't join, and you don't like the outcome, you need to create a new initiative to change that. So that's how it works. So I will fix on this one, because I think that this is probably one of the most important areas. Don't strive from consensus, or don't strive for consensus. This was a mistake we made. We thought that everyone should be part of every single decision in the company and everyone should agree. That was a massive mistake, right? First, what we learned, and that just looking at myself, it's like, I don't care with the same intensity about everything. There are things that I care deeply. And I will always be involved with projects. There are other things that I don't care at all. And many things in between. So, but if I'm forced to go to, for example, if you invite me to a thing that I don't care, but I need to give my opinion, then my ego will come into play. Because if you are asking my opinion, then I will have an opinion. And I will fight for it, even if I don't care. Right? So that's why it never worked. But and another thing was, this was probably the most important, everything can be changed. If you made a decision today, very agile lean sort of stuff, we will never know more today than we will know tomorrow. So if you make a decision today, and tomorrow there's more information and people are not happy, we start again. So no formal meetings, so that's, this is a thing that Mesh loves, and we try not to meet to discuss stuff. We either need to decide or we don't meet at all. So if there is a meeting, tell us why we are meeting. Why do I need to be there? What are we discussing and what are the proposals? If there's no proposals, we try not to meet. So if people want to vote something, we propose, well, that's our proposal, okay, now let's meet, decide that, and then it can be much faster. There are rules, like we have sometimes we just meet to chat, but not formal. Slack, very important. Open salaries. This was a big thing, and this was probably the last decision that I made, and Mash as well, of course. Like that was not. We didn't ask for opinions. So this was the last decision that we made completely alone. We are going to have it, period. The reason that we decided to do that was I always wanted that, Mesh wanted that, and we knew that this is a no turning back decision. Once you make this decision to open everything, including how much I get, they know how much I get from my own company, right? Once you get to this level, you cannot come back. If you open the financials and you open all the salaries, you cannot take that away ever without destroying the culture of your company. So I decided not to put that on vote. It would be like that, period. If people were uncomfortable, they would leave the company, and then I would be okay. Because I could not hold such an important thing, because maybe one person or two people that would not be okay with that, and that could leave our company in the future. And the longer the longer you wait for doing that, the harder it will be, and chances are you'll never do, because there will be so much inconsistencies or discrepancies and stuff that it will be harder. So you need to do as early as possible. So we just did it. So there is salary reviews, the way that we do. We have this is constantly evolving. We have sponsors. We are trying to cater for people that are not normally. The just now is like someone says, "I want a salary, a pay rise," because I've been doing that. Quite often, I think in 3 years of the company, I think that we had one salary negotiation. All the other salaries, the company gave to people without them asking, by recognition. And that's why this is also very important. It keeps things fair, and people recognize what their peers are doing. So we can review easily and adjust people as they evolve. But in theory, when that doesn't happen, then people should just say, "Look, I want a pay rise." Some people don't have this personality, and that's why we create sponsors. So every person has a sponsor that will speak to this person, and maybe the sponsor may make the case for that person or even a colleague. But we never need to use that yet. Yeah, this is very important. Don't come to me, so I'm working with Java, I'd like to work with Scala. For fuck's sake, get a Scala project yourself. Why are you complaining to me? So the thing is, that's the problem. This is what I realized. When we want things, we want the world to change so that we feel happy. But we are not willing to do anything. People need to do stuff for us. No, fuck you. So if you want to work with a new technology, different clients, blah, blah, do something about it. And then we saw, but how can I do that? Well, start showing to the world that we know Scala. Put a training course together, write a blog post, give a screencast, go to a conference and talk about Akka. Make sure that people know that the company has this capability and that we increase the chances of us having that project. But don't come to me and moan about it. So, and that's part of your career ownership. It's part of everything, right? If you want a boss, I can be a boss, but then you say you need to go to this project and work with technology XYZ forever. So if you don't want that, you need to do the other part. So there's a lot of things that in terms of diversity that we do. There is I don't give a Fridays, people that meet on Fridays to do loads of different stuff and play RPGs and loads of stuff. There is even a channel for people that can just vent about whatever they want to vent about their clients, a safe place just to go and vent. There are some issues in here as well. As I said, there are loads of things I can talk about in here, but I don't have much time, so I go to other things that I find important. This doesn't apply to every company, but it's much easier to do in a company like ours. Mesh and I, we were flying back from Barcelona. I think that was last year in this company, if I'm not wrong, but it was one of the times that we were here. And we were in the airport flying back to the UK. And we decided, we could create a mission statement and a vision statement for our company. And we spent 2 hours while we were waiting for our plane to write a statement, a mission, and a vision of our company. And we were very happy about it. And as soon as we arrived in the UK, we never talked about that again. So, because what we realized is that they are just empty words. It doesn't matter what I say or Mesh say that is our culture or our vision. If people don't behave accordingly, if they don't buy that, if it's not their natural instinct, it doesn't matter which statement or vision you have, because that's never be true. So we just decided to scrap that. So I think that when people say, what is the vision? Some clients love asking this question. I don't know what it's about with clients, with these big organizations. They want to figure out what kind of organization you have. They ask these kind of questions. So where do you see your company in 5 years? I don't have a clue. I don't know. And we don't have targets. We don't plan, we need to have this amount of people, this amount of... No, fuck that. Right? So I think that this is what we prefer to look at. Is create a place that we love and belong. So if you want to be here next week, next month, next year, what we need to do as a company? And because we don't have a product, we are a service company, it's very easy for us to maneuver. We can keep maneuvering forever. If you want to focus on training on a specific technology stuff, it's much easier for us. That's why this is very contextual. Other companies won't have this flexibility, right? So you need to take that in mind. So I think that we have a lot of things in the friendship model. I won't definitely not have this. So if you want to more again, I can run a full open space on our friendship if you want to know more. I think that I've been thinking a lot about software craftsmanship. So I think that we, as I was saying at the beginning, we've done very well to bring professionalism to developers. And I really think that in order to achieve that, we should stop playing what we call support functions. A lot of companies, they will have IT as a support function, not as core business. And that's totally fine, absolutely. If I have a house, I need to have a plumber coming in to fix my problem, right? But the plumber doesn't need to be my employee or living in my house. When I have that problem, there's support. Plumbing is not the main goal of my house, right? My house is to live with my family, right? So, but sometimes I need some support. And I will hire a specialist, they will come in, they'll fix my problem and go away. And I think that you need to think about that as well. So this is not about owning a company. What I wanted to show to you is that you can organize companies in a slightly different way. And being independent consultant, working for tech companies or consultancy companies, you end up moving, like a plumber, for example, moves for a service company. And you probably, if you work for a service company or for yourself or a group of friends, you may end up in a much better place. And we will work with the same clients, but from a very different perspective. Right? So you'll be there as a professional solving their problems instead of being a person employed in a support function. See what I'm saying? So, but you need to understand how companies are run. If you want to go to the next level of professionalism, if you want to have your own company, your own being independent, you need to start knowing how business works. Right? So you need to work on invoice, not getting paid, forecast, everything. It's not just writing code anymore. So, and I think that another, just to end, I criticize a lot of the agile people, right? They hate me, quite a few of them. But they did one thing right. They took agile and they took that to the business. So they showed that a set of practices, a set of way of working could make their business better. We as a Craftsmanship movement didn't do that. I'm okay with that. I'm not saying that we did a bad job. I think that we did a great job in bringing professionalism. And first of all, we need to sort out our own shit. We need to know what we were doing. We need to know how to write code. What thing code means, how we test right things, how we do DevOps. We need to sort out ourselves first. And we did that, and we are doing that with the Craftsmanship community. But I think the next for me in Craftsmanship is we need to start taking Craftsmanship towards the business as Agile did. Because otherwise we will always be seen as support function. And as I was saying, the developers anonymous in the Socrates, in 10 years I will still be talking to the developers because my manager said that, because my company is that, my team is, oh, fuck that, right? So we need to evolve, but we need to go towards the business. Again, to understand business. So those are the books that I mentioned, a few of my contacts. So yeah, that's what I had to say. Thank you.
So open salaries. Why is it so important?
Fairness, trust, full information.
Okay.
Why would we hide information if you want a trust environment?
Is this information that you need in order to work in a software developer company?
No. Like, you don't need that. You don't need any of this. But you need to decide which company you want to work for. And what is not that you need. You probably don't need, but what would make your life much better? Which kind of environment?
That's what I'm thinking. So this information should help me to feel better or
so I believe
better.
that.
It doesn't to me. Why is it? It's not. I don't care how much you earn.
So that's the thing. So this is a very interesting topic. When we opened, and I spoke to a few people afterwards, by no means I compare them in terms of the level of commitment and how much they like the company or not. But it's just like their nature. For example, when we do recruitment, because one problem that we had was recruitment, right? So if we are hiring someone, is this person now being paid more or less than whoever was involved and stuff? So first of all, I said, like, why do I need to make the decision myself? I don't need to. So I just have more people involved from the company, then whoever was involved, they make a financial offer to that person. So if someone else that was not involved in that selection process was upset, it's like, go and complain to Pedro. He proposed this salary and did that group. No, I don't have anything to do with that. So complain to your peers or get involved in the next one. So there is someone to interview. I want to interview. Right? But so I'm not answering your question. So the thing is, when we opened, every new person that is hired, there's some people that they will go straight away, if they were not involved, to see the new salary, and the salary of the new person joining. And there are other people that we, as soon as we open, we send the link to everyone for the spreadsheet. They said, like, I looked at when you sent me the link, and I will never look at that again because I just don't care. And that's totally fine. The thing is, you have the choice of not knowing, but I prefer, if I want people to trust me, I don't want to be hiding anything from them myself. Right? I need to prove to them why my salary is high. I think that it's important that we, as a company, say, this is our costs, this is how our people are treated. If you don't want to look at the data, don't look at the data. But like, it's important for me that everyone understands.
There is another thing that's important. So if I'm annoyed at my customer, I really hate being there. I know the cost I'm going to bring to the company if I stay in the bench. So it's important to me to have that decision. Okay, I'm going to drop this customer. I don't want to work there. I'm going to whoever and say I'm going to drop. But I know what impact financially that has to the company.
Okay, but that's a different topic.
But it helps me take a decision. Yeah. It's an informed decision. I'm not going to moan to Sandro, take that decision for me. I'm going to say, I'm going to take that decision because I know how much this costs financially. So I think it's
and also, like, if I want to stay on the bench, I also know where I am. So having all the financial information makes people to behave in the way that they want. And there is some peer pressure as well. They understand. So, like, if I'm on the bench,
that's cool. That's what I understand. The only concern is that what if you have two people, but they are not able to perform the same, right? And somehow the one has a better salary, let's say that way. So doesn't that create maybe a slightly awkward moment?
So
or something like. I mean,
we may have harder conversations, which did not happen yet, except once. But I wouldn't be afraid of this conversation. If someone is feeling that way, I cannot hide this problem, causing the salaries. This is a situation that needs to be addressed. If there is any person in the company that is not comfortable with how other people are performing and stuff, that needs to be addressed and not hidden. Right? So this will bring some interesting conversations with people that have discrepancies. But hopefully we will have the conversations that we need to have, and then adjust people if needs be. So, any other question? Your time. Yeah.
Do you feel that besides IT, or you can implement that?
Sorry, say it again?
Besides IT, or I mean, you can apply this in another business? I mean,
so maybe not exactly the practice there. That's why I separated that. So what you can apply is the values. If you go to the reinventing organization, so there are different companies, very different sectors, different sizes, that they have implemented self-management, wholeness, evolutionary process, and things that come from the green as well. Empowerment, values, value-driven. So you can focus on the values that those kind of stages have, and then adopt the practices according to that context. So the book, in the Reinventing Organizations, they list quite a few companies, and they give examples how different companies did that are not exactly how we do, but I could not just take some random events. I could talk concretely about what we've done in our context. Okay? All right, thank you. So if you want more information, we talk tomorrow in the open space or something, or tonight. All right, thank you. That companies would empower me, so because I'm awesome and I could change the world, and they know nothing, and if I were empowered, I would help them to be an awesome company. And when you start thinking about that, you realize that if you were empowered, how you would change. And you realize that empowerment on its own is just not enough, because you can have all the willingness in the world to help, but that doesn't mean that you have the experience or you know what to do. Right, so, and I also took that on board. It's like if you're going to build something, yeah, it would be great to empower everyone, but then would we fail as a business in 2 months? Because what do we know about running a business or anything? So, and then you start looking for answers. And one thing I knew for sure was that if we had a company, we wanted it to be based on software craftsmanship and agile values, and lean as well, of course. So these three things, together, for me, are very, very important. but that, again, like we know how to do that in projects, in test driving code, and lean startups and stuff, but actually running companies is not the same thing. And then you start looking for answers, and so of course I had my own, I heard there's a great book, by the way, so I had my own utopic view of the world, but could that be translated in something that, it was easy to sell that to developers in a team. Could that be translated into organizational? So, hello. My name is Sandro. I'm the founder of the London Software Craftsmanship community. I know quite a few of you already. And so as probably some of you may know, I've been involved with the software craftsmanship movement very early. Was one of the people that brought craftsmanship from the US to the UK and Europe later on. And for the past 6 years, we spent a lot of time bringing software craftsmanship for developers. So I might close that. So bringing craftsmanship to developers. And I think that all the communities, like in London and across Europe, including Barcelona, I think that we've done a lot of good things for promote professionalism, promote some technical practices. The craftsmanship movement helped XP to almost like bring back XP or rebalance Agile, which was a good thing. But I think that for me, the next thing is we are still fighting organizational models. And that was quite enlightening for me, because, okay, so now I see the world from more than one perspective. And that's not an easy perspective to look at. So, and then also, like, can we create something different? And then, one thing is to realize that you have a problem. Another thing is to have a solution. And I realized that no one sets up a company to suck, right? So you don't say like, okay, I'm going to start a new business and I'll bring all these people here and I'll make them miserable, right? So that's not how it goes. So why it happens? And then I was trying to look for answers on these things. And I said, like, how can we actually try to create something that is slightly different, that is slightly more aligned to the software craftsmanship principles and values? And because then I was starting, I put my employee hat and so like, I complain about so much stuff, all this bureaucracy and this and that, but can we actually do something better? And I could not. I had ideas, of course, but it's not that I had all the answers, and neither were my business partner or my friends and stuff. So, and then we started looking for some answers. And oh yeah, so that's all I think that I was thinking about. As an employee, it would be awesome if I was empowered, right? So I was always demanding. So quite often, like I go to Socrates, all the Socrates conferences, and I speak to a lot of developers in the craftsmanship communities, and it's always the same theme in the past 6 years. Is my manager this, my team lead that, and my colleagues that, and blah blah. And it's almost becoming a developers anonymous, right? So and sort of stuff. And so I think that for me the next point in craftsmanship, and like as I said, like I wrote a full book on it and about professionalism and the developer's attitude and stuff. But we haven't done much on company structure, if you like. And I now had a problem because when I started the whole craftsmanship movement thing, or helped to bring that to Europe, I was focused on the developer's side, and I had been a permanent employee for 17 years of my life, and it was very easy for me to complain about the world, right? So the company sucks, and the project sucks, this client sucks, everything sucks, and I was trying like, no, the world needs to be better so that I can feel okay, right? So, but I was never in a position where I was on the other side of the table, right? So it was easy for me to actually complain about the companies and stuff, but then all of a sudden, just short of 3 years, I had the opportunity to start my own company structure. And then I read a lot of things. I'm going to show that again, this list of books, because they were quite essential for me in order to clarify some thoughts, get some ideas and stuff. But one book that was quite revealing was this one, Reinventing Organizations. I definitely recommend that you read. As everything, it has pros and cons. There are some blog posts that actually go against some of the stuff that is in the book. But reading this book actually helped us to, first of all, to validate some ideas we had, and also to actually get some more ideas from other organizations. This book talks about 20, I think, organizations that are all above 100 people, and they are run in a very special way. And they are in many different segments as well. So it was fascinating to see how companies of various different sizes and different industry segments can be structured in a way where people are empowered and decision making is decentralized and everything else. So one thing that book does, which was fascinating for me, because it's easy for you to understand that you have a problem. Well, to know that you have a problem. Another thing is to understand exactly what the problem is, how you got to that place, and what you could do to avoid. So the book basically talks about the evolution of humanity